Here are the current odds to win the Stanley Cup, brought to you by FanDuel. The Colorado Avalanche, the favorite to win their second cup of the last 3 seasons. Carolina is your second choice, followed by the defending champions, Todd Fuhrman's Las Vegas Golden Knights. And speaking of Todd Fuhrman, it's time for Todd Talk, brought to you by FanDuel. We begin with what appears to be a goalie mask on your head. Todd, you were a collegiate hockey goalie. People may not know that. Can you tell us a little bit about your career as a collegiate hockey goalie?
I mean, Jay, let's be honest. It wasn't really much of a career to write home about. I think most of the dings you'll see on my mask all came as a glorified shooter tutor in practice, but had a couple starts under my belt, a pair of wins, a gambling suspension before it was regulated or legalized. Apparently, the NCAA kind of frowns on those things, but that's a completely different discussion for a different day for us to get into.
I'll say it in that way, you were very much ahead of your time. Todd's odds for the Hart Trophy, and by Todd's odds, I mean FanDuel's odds, look just like this. Here we go. Connor McDavid still the favorite despite the Oilers' struggles to start the season. Jack Hughes, your second choice, all the way down to Elias Pettersson. It still feels wide open, Todd, after 20 games. Should Connor McDavid still be the front runner?
I mean, look, Connor's always going to be the front runner until it feels like he's mathematically eliminated. I mean, he could go out there in a span of 4 or 5 games, put up 15 points, and suddenly we're talking about number 97 doing the unthinkable like we've seen so many times in the past. But, Jay, look at this odds board, and I think there's a lot of disrespect being shown to a number of players. Look, I'm thrilled there's a Hughes with such a short number there, but Quinn Hughes deserves serious consideration as well. And while he might be the front runner for the Norris, I think a 30-1 price tag on him to win the Hart Trophy is a little bit of disrespect. And don't look now with what's going on down there in Tampa. Nikita Kucherov has single-handedly put this Lightning team on his back, and a price of 15-1. I think you can make a lot worse bets than maybe backing those two players as we get closer to the quarter pole.
I think you make some excellent points there. Is there an off-the-radar pick for any of these major NHL awards that you wouldn't mind backing?
I mean, there's a couple of long shots out there, and we can go to the Vezina market for one player in Cam Talbot. I know he's essentially a journeyman at this point in his career, but you look at some of his underlying numbers playing in this Kings system, goal save above expected, given what he's doing for them that Phoenix Copley wasn't up until his strong start earlier this week against the Arizona Coyotes. So 25-1 for Cam Talbot, I think, is worth a flyer. And then, Jay, I'd have to be a fool if I completely ignored everyone's favorite media darling and Coach Tortorella and the improbable run the Flyers have been on. We talk all the time about the NHL playoff picture and how it starts to take shape around U.S. Thanksgiving. Torts has the Flyers very much in the discussion, and I think if they find a way to stay relevant in the Metro Division going forward, you would like to be holding that ticket at 35-1 in your pocket. You just may have to grease a few voters' wheels to try and get them to back that somewhat abrasive personality.
Yeah, I think that's true. He does say this is his. Are you going to take that off? You've had it with the mask.
I'm taking it off, Jay. I want you to see my stylish flow that's much more professional at this point in my life than the locks I used to sport when I was a glorified backup eating Sour Patch Kids out of my pads between periods.
Wait a minute. Did you rock a mullet when you were backing up the starter in college?
You know, a mullet seems to be a little bit aggressive. I may have gone about 6 months without cutting my hair. It had a mind of its own, and there are plenty of pictures circulating from team pictures that were taken on the tail end of a bender at 6:30 in the morning, but I didn't quite have a true mullet that I could really brag about.
All right. I did, but that's for another time, Todd. Edmonton 2-2 under new head coach Chris Knobloch. They've lost 2 straight. They're still minus 160 to make the playoffs. They're 7 points out of a playoff spot. And you just said it, Todd. U.S. Thanksgiving is when we start to decide who might make it and who might not. When do we hit the button on the to miss the playoffs bet for Edmonton?
We're getting a lot closer. I mean, Edmonton trying to do everything they can to jolt this team into regaining some of the form that had them eliminated in last year's playoffs against the Vegas Golden Knights in 6 games. I mean, Cal Picard comes in and still continues to struggle between the pipes. We've seen the struggles of Jack Campbell since he was sent down to Bakersfield. I mean, it's not just the goaltending, though. This roster from top to bottom really scuffling to find an identity. And normally you get that new coach bump. The Oilers haven't seen that. The power play is struggling. I'm not ready to hit the panic button just yet, but with every potential game that this team doesn't accumulate 2 points, you start to begin to wonder if they're already looking at one of those 2 wild card spots in the Western Conference.
All right, we ask you every week, Todd, to make a Super Bowl pick, but we're going to get back to that next week. Since we showed you those Stanley Cup odds from FanDuel, do you have an early season Stanley Cup pick?
Well, we talked about it before the season. I made a case for the Dallas Stars. That number has come down a little bit, 15-1 into that 10 or 11 range. I think Dallas has gone out there and exceeded expectations, and they're doing it without getting the best from Jake Ottinger just yet. But I think it also could be time, Jay, for us to add to our Stanley Cup portfolio with a price on the LA Kings. I look at this Kings team, and they're built from a very similar mold in terms of what we saw from the Golden Knights. There's a ton of depth at the center position. You have 4 lines that appear to be almost interchangeable with clearly defined identities. You have a veteran defenseman in Drew Doughty, a little bit of youth in that third defensive pairing. And look, over the last couple of years, you haven't needed a true Vezina caliber goaltender to get your name engraved in the Stanley Cup. I mean, Darcy Kemper 2 years ago was good, wasn't great. Last year, it was Laurent Brossoit and Aiden Hill for the Knights. So why not the LA Kings in the Pacific Division? I think this is a number that won't be available when we have this discussion much closer to Christmas time.
This is a guy who knows hockey because he played hockey and he looked good doing it, and he still does, even if his shower doesn't have any water pressure. He's Todd Fuhrman. Todd, have a great Thanksgiving, you and your wife, and have a great weekend, too.
Hey, always a pleasure, Jay. It'll be great when the NHL resumes play and plenty of football to keep us entertained throughout the course of the weekend.